What's up, everybody? Welcome to today's edition of Everyday Discipline, where we decode, deconstruct, and reverse engineer self-discipline for you, yes, you listener, to get whatever it is you want in your life. And I'm serious about that shit, by the way. Whatever you want comes based off of your discipline in order to get it. Better body, more money, better relationships. All of that requires more discipline. Even getting a connection with God requires more discipline. Right now, I am on a 96-day streak of reading the Bible every day. That requires some discipline now, doesn't it? And I found out some cool shit in that time too. So here's the deal, guys. Discipline gets you everywhere that you want to go. So wherever you want to go, you are in the right place. The deal with it is, though, is you actually have to get there. I want you to do something while you're listening to this episode, or actually after you're listening to this episode, to improve your life in some way. I tell you a little story, we link it up with a lesson, the application of that lesson, and then it leads with an action. Like, that's what you're going to leave this show with, and I want you to take the action. Obviously, I don't know you. I can't force you to take the action, but I wouldn't want to force you even if I could, because I want you to want this for yourself, right? There's a big difference. There's a big difference between motivation and inspiration, and I think people screw them up all the time. Here's the simplest way I can explain it. Motivation is energy you borrow that you have to pay back with interest. If you listen to a motivational speech, if you watch a YouTube video, maybe it's one of my YouTube videos, or if you listen to a podcast, maybe it's my podcast, and you get motivated and that's why you're there, you're borrowing that energy from me. And you have to pay that energy back because you didn't generate it yourself. It's one of the reasons why most of the time coaching programs fail for the participants, because the coach is relying on motivation to get people to move. I was one of those people that used to do that until I recognized that I was like, man, these people have to stay longer than I thought they would. And then when they leave, they stop getting the results. What's going on with this? Oh, no shit. I was motivating them. Bad idea. Inspiration, though, is a little bit different. Inspiration is energy that you build from inside yourself. It's based on your own desire. And your own desire and your own perspective can't be stopped. And so if you find yourself inspired, you will continue to do whatever work it is. If you find yourself inspired, yes, you will have the money you want, the body you want, and the relationships that you want. But you have to be inspired to do it. So I wasn't really planning on making that a soapbox thing, but it wound up being that way. I actually want to talk to you guys about fear today. So I was watching my son's Little League game yesterday, and he is in Double A. So in this Little League, they've got farm, they've got Double A, Triple A, and majors. So he's in Double A. He's 8. And this is his third year playing baseball. And I noticed something last night, and it really lined up with what I see in a lot of business owners. So he is a right-handed batter, and he throws right-handed, but he writes left-handed. So I don't know where this is all going, but he's batting right-handed. And I noticed that he is doing something interesting when the pitcher throws. This is the first year that kids are pitching to each other, and it isn't what I need him to do. It isn't what his coach needs him to do. It's not what he needs him to do if he's going to be successful at the game of baseball. And what happens to him is that as soon as the pitcher throws it, he takes a step away from the pitcher. So, for example, his left foot's forward. He's taking his left foot and he's moving it towards third base. Actually, closer to the dugout. That'd be on the third base line. He's backing away. And I'm looking at this and I go, he's scared of the ball hitting him. That's what's happening. He is scared of the ball hitting him, to the point where late in the game, as soon as the pitcher would throw, he would shuffle backwards towards the dugout because he was so nervous about getting hit. Now here's the lesson, guys, and I'm getting to this right now, which is that the fear of what might happen sinks your ability to make things happen. All right, think about that. The fear of what might happen sinks your ability to make things happen. What this is really a conversation is, it's a conversation about making a mountain out of a molehill, right? How many people do you know? How many people do you know who have ideas for a business to start, but they never do anything with it? I remember having this conversation with a really good friend of mine while we were on the way to picking up the very first shipment of my apparel when I had an apparel company. And it was like there was all these circumstances why it couldn't get delivered. And I was like, fuck that. We're going to go rent a truck and we're going to drive down to the loading dock and we're going to pick this stuff up and we're going to bring it back to my garage. And we were talking about it on the way down there. And he's like, man, I'm really proud. Like, you're making it happen. Like, so many people have ideas, but you're making it happen. And I recognize that most people don't. Like, they've got ideas that they don't want to share with anybody because they're worried somebody's going to take their idea. Don't worry about anybody taking your idea. Nobody takes action, or very few of us take action. Hopefully, if you're listening to the show, you're somebody who takes action. But if you're struggling to take action, recognize you're not alone. Most people don't. But even if you've had the idea and you've executed on the start of it, let's say you had an idea for a business, you started the business, and now the business is doing okay. Like, you got to a point where the business is doing okay. That's great. How many times have you had an idea to massively improve it? And I'm talking about massively improve. And you haven't executed on it. How many times has that happened? When you don't act, here's all it is. It's based on your story of fear. When you don't act, it's based on your story of fear. Fear of what could happen. Remember the lesson. Fear of what could happen sinks your ability to make things happen. Now, two things about this, right? When you really look at this, when you look at this pattern in behavior, which I see a lot, I see it a lot. And there's a pattern and a behavior that links up with it every single time. When you really look at it, it's like the question becomes, how likely is the worst case scenario? Of course, it could happen. It's possible. But how likely is it really? Because that's the thing that we're scared of. Because most of the time, the worst case scenario is that we make this big bet and we were going to improve something and then the whole world falls apart as a result of us making this thing. All right. How likely is that really to happen? Is the weight of this one decision really that big? Most of the time we find it's not. A few of the times we find that it is. But getting there really helps release some of the fear because it opens your eyes to the reality of the fear versus your imagination of the fear. But let's say you do find a worst case scenario, something that would actually be catastrophic. Well, how exactly would that happen? Right? What would need to be true for the worst case scenario to become true? And we create a list of that. Creating a list of that of what would need to happen, what would need to be true for the worst case scenario to become true as well. Well, that's a really powerful conversation too, because now we know what we've got to protect against. Because it's like, man, if these three things happen, then the worst case scenario happens. All right, cool. What do we need to do to make sure that those three things don't happen? It's a simple conversation, but it's not easy. Because most of the time people look at this and they think they've got a really complex problem. But there is a simple solution to their seemingly complex problem. I can assure you that all the problems right now that you've got, you think are more complicated than they are. And I remember asking God once for complicated problems because I thought that was a good idea. I was like, give me some complicated problems. That's what I want. And the answer I got from God was that I don't make complicated problems. You make complicated problems when you try to outthink me. Okay, that makes sense. It's part of the human condition. Welcome to the club. So that's part one. Like, if you really look at it, how likely is the worst case scenario? And what would need to be true for the worst case scenario to also be true? And then, well, what do we need to do to make sure that those things don't happen? Part two is that you need to recognize that you're making a monster out of it the longer that you wait. Right? The longer you wait to take whatever action you know that you need to take, like that risk that you know you need to take, it becomes a bigger and bigger and bigger monster. And the problem seems bigger specifically because you put it off, which is making you now deal with your anxiety and your stories and your questions about yourself. It's like, that's the thing. You start thinking like, am I really the person I thought I was? Is that the way it needs to be? Like, am I wrong for doing this? There's anxiety in this. And I don't care if you're just starting out or if you own a $10 million company, everybody's got anxiety about that when they're not acting. And it's okay. It's okay. You're not fundamentally broken. There's nothing wrong with you per se. There's something wrong with what's happening, but there's nothing wrong with you specifically. Here's the thing with this, guys, is there is no bad decision. There is only indecision. And I get it. A lot of us are so scared to make the wrong decision that we don't make any decision. That's really what it comes down to. But when you're stuck in a place of fear, you find indecision to be the easiest lack of decision. But it's the thing that keeps you stagnant and the thing that keeps you right there. And if you're right there, then you're really vulnerable to attack. You just think you're safe. It's a big difference. So I gave you the call to action here a minute ago, which is really to look at this and figure out what is the absolute worst case scenario and what would need to be true for the worst case scenario to be true, and then how do you stop those things from happening? Right? That is what I want you to do in the next 24 to 48 hours. Once you get clear on this, guys, the fear goes away. So if you're scared of taking an action right now, even if it's outside of your business, let's say it's a conversation you want to have in a relationship, this is going to remove the fear because you're going to recognize that you have been making a monster out of it. When reality is, it's just a shadow of the little monster that goes up against the wall that makes it look really big. So take action on this 24 to 48 hours. That is your takeaway and the thing that I want you to go do inside of today's episode. As always, guys, thank you so much for listening here on this show. I hope that you are doing something with what we talk about on this show. I hope it's working for you. I hope that it is bettering your life and bettering your business in every possible and measurable way. And if it is, do me a favor, give me a rating and a review on whatever platform you are listening to this on. It helps with the algorithm, helps me get this message out to more people, and I certainly appreciate it. Leave a comment as well if it's something that resonates with you and you feel called to do that. All right, guys, that's it. That's the show for the day. I'm going to do my job and come back next time. I want you to do your job and you come back too.